Welcome to chapter 8 of the book of Daniel. It begins with Daniel's vision of the ram, which occurs here, it says in verse 1, in the third year of the kingdom of Baltasar, in Greek, the Vasileos, the king. A vision appeared to me, I, Daniel, after the appearing to me at the beginning. He was in the third year, which was towards the end of the reign of Belshazzar, when the hand wrote upon the white wall that King Belshazzar, the same name, called Daniel, which his name was Belshazzar also, in the Mede-Persian dialect. And so the thing about this chapter, as we find out here, is it talks about a kingdom that's going to be coming fairly soon. Right after this, Baltasar is eliminated from the kingdom of Babylon. The Medes and the Persians come in. And then after the Medes and the Persians rule for the world for quite a while, this area, then Alexander the Great comes, and here, and we get down into this chapter, we'll see that this is what it is. So the historians, they don't believe that Daniel could have been that accurate, so therefore he wrote this after the happenings, not he wrote it, but somebody else wrote it later and predated it. And the one thing that I see, I'm a history major in college, is that when the thing that is written disagrees with their assumption, then the thing must be wrong. The person must have gotten a mistake. An ancient who wrote something thousands of years ago must have got the thing wrong. He quoted the wrong person or so far because it doesn't fit their idea of what it should be. But then when the thing does agree with them, then it's right. So here, the argument that they have in this chapter, to me, it becomes null and void if you're a Christian, because Jesus mentions Daniel. So in the abomination of desolation that occurs later on in this chapter, where it's mentioned by Daniel. So therefore, if the historians are right in this figuring out, though it must have been written much later, then it wasn't true, then Jesus would be not true also. You'd have to go along with that. Well, I'm not going to go that way, because I know the things that the Bible says and what Jesus has done, it all makes sense. And I would take the Bible and Jesus' word over any historian. So this prediction of the Medes and the Persians comes in, it mentions it at the last of the wrath, the end of time, and this is what it's going to be talking about here. The first part will be close to this time, but then it jumps to a further time. And he continues and he says, and I was in Susis, in the palace. That is, Shushan is Susa. The city is in Iran today. It's east of the Euphrates River and west of the Zagros Mountains. And it mentions that Nebuchadnezzar had plundered Susa earlier, and the Medes captured it in 617. So it was a major city in eastern Persia and Iran. And so he was in the palace in this city that was on the border towards Babylon, which is in the region of Elam. And Elam is the western part of Iran today, bordering Iraq. And I saw in a vision, and was upon the Ule. The Ule River is a river that comes down from the east, and it used to originally flowed into the Euphrates River, but apparently it doesn't any longer. You can go on the maps and see this, the maps. And I lifted my eyes, ophthalmos, ophthalmologist, comes from that, the derivative, and I looked. And behold, one ram standing before the Ubal. The Ubal is a Hebrew word, means a stream or a river, and which he was the river would be the Ule. And there was to him horns, and the horns were high, and the one was higher than the other, and the one ascended up last, and the high one ascended up last. So we're told later that this is the Mede-Persian Empire, and so the ruler, the last ruler that ascended was the strongest one apparently, and that would have been the ones that Alexander fought with probably. And I beheld the ram butting towards the west, the Thalason, the sea. That's what they called Thalason, the Mediterranean Sea, the sea, and they also use that for west, and the north and the south. And all the wild beasts shall not stand before him. And there was not one rescuing from out of his hand, and he did according to his will and was magnified. So this ruler of the Medes and the Persians was powerful and basically ruled the world, for the known world, for quite a while, at least the world around the Mediterranean and so forth. And then it says, and I was perceiving, and behold, a he-goat of the goats came from the southwest upon the face of all the earth. Now the difference between a ram and a he-goat, I think a ram is of the sheep and the goat is a goat. They're two different animals. They look the same. If you don't know much about animal husbandry like myself, I wouldn't probably hardly be able to tell the difference. But they both have horns and they love to butt. I know that. And so the goat came from the southwest upon the face of all the earth. Southwest from Persia would have been where Greece would have been. And it was not touching the geese, the earth. And to the trago, is a he-goat, trago, was a horn, which may be viewed between his eyes. So normally the horns, I believe, are outside of the eyes, and they stick up on them. They didn't have just one horn. But this is what he saw, and he came unto the ram having the horns, plural, the two which I beheld standing before the Ubal, the stream or the river, and ran against him with the thrust of his strength. That is the he-goat. That would have been Greece. And I beheld him anticipating unto the ram, and he was furiously enraged against him. And the Greeks and the Persians fought a lot over hundreds of years. And he hit the goat, the ram. The goat hit the ram and broke both of his horns. So that was the end of the Mede-Persian Empire. And there was not strength to the ram to stand before him. And he tossed him unto the ground, the he-goat, tossed him, the two pronouns there, the ram upon the ground, and trampled upon him. And there was not one rescuing the ram from out of his hand. And the he-goat of the goats was magnified even unto exceedingly. And in his being strong, his great horn was broken. Alexander was the strongest, and he was broken, died very young, but yet he had conquered most of the world from the Indus River in India all the way into Egypt. And there ascended another 4 horns underneath him. And these 4 horns would have been what they call the diadochi, which means means successors. And Alexander had 4 successors, and they were Antipater. He actually had more, but generally they call this the 4, the diadochi, and Antipater, Ptolemy, who was in Egypt, Seleucus, who was in Turkey and Antioch, and Antigonus, who was in Greece. And so these rulers fought for a long time, 100 years or more, who was going to get what part of the Alexander's empire. And so these four horns ascended. But they went to different parts of the world. So they were all the way from Egypt and around up into Greece, through Israel, Lebanon, Syria, Turkey, all the way around to Greece. So there was a large area that they covered. And from out of the one of them came forth one strong horn, and was magnified exceedingly towards the south and towards the east and towards the setting of the sun. And it was magnified unto the force of the heaven. Now here, I believe it changes, and time goes into the end times, because it'll talk about the end times here a little bit later. But before it mentions that, it tells us a little bit about what was happening, and this strong horn. So it was magnified towards the south and towards the east and towards the setting of the sun. Well, from where? My belief from seeing everything and translating and over and over again is this is talking about the beast, and he's in Jerusalem, and he goes all these different directions and does his nefarious deeds. And it was magnified unto the force of the heaven. I guess you could have it he, and he fell, or it fell upon the earth from the force of the heaven. So it was more than just an earthly thing that was going on. It was also in the cosmos, in the heaven, and it fell upon the earth from the force of the heaven. The force, the dynamios, could be the military. It was magnified unto the military of the heaven, it could be, and fell upon the earth from the force of the heaven and from the stars. So there's something celestial about this beast and what he was doing. And go up to the next. I didn't put the jump links here, so I had to do it by hand. And he trampled upon them. And unto the commander-in-chief he was magnified. Commander-in-chief. Now you can add that to the English Derivatives book. The archy is a ruler, and a strategy. Strategy has to do with military, and it means a commander-in-chief. And he was magnified. The mega, wherever you see the mega, has something to do with enlarging or large. And I believe he's talking about Satan. And through him the sacrifice was disturbed. Now, what sacrifice is it talking about? And the holy place shall be made desolate. To me, it sounds like Jerusalem again. What other place would be important enough to be put in here? No place that I know of. And a sin offering was given for a sacrifice. So there now even we have sacrifice offerings. And righteousness was tossed unto the ground. And he performed and was prosperous. The place, I believe, is in Israel. And he says, and I heard one Holy One speaking, and we went through the Holy Ones in the last chapter. And one Holy One said to the Felmuni, and the Felmuni down here, it says it's well, it doesn't have it. It's translated. I should look it up, but I didn't. I think it's like a sentinel, as I remember. And the Felmuni speaking, for how long shall the vision stand? And the taking away the sacrifice and the granting the sin of desolation in the holy place and the force shall be trampled upon. So to me, this is all in Israel. And he said unto him, unto evening and morning, 2,300 days, 6 years and 30 months. And the holy place shall be cleansed. Now, people that are studying the 7.5 years can put this into that equation and come up with something better than I could. And it came to pass in my beholding, I, Daniel, the vision, and I sought understanding, just as John did, wanted to understand these things that he's seeing. And behold, there stood before me as an appearance of a man. Now, was this Jesus, the Son of Man, it mentioned in the last chapter? Could be. And I heard the voice of a man in the midst of the Ule, that was in the river, and he called and said, Gabriel, Gabriel was an archangel, and he's mentioned in Luke 1:11-38. He appeared to Zechariah, and then he appeared later to Mary, and he was an archangel. And Wikipedia has it wrong here because it says that it was called the man Gabriel. It doesn't say that in the New Testament. It doesn't call him a man. But Wikipedia decided to put that in there for some reason. I don't know what Bible they were using, but and he called and said, Gabriel, bring understanding the vision for that one. And he came and stood next to my position. And in his coming I was distraught, and I fell upon my face. And he said to me, take notice, O Son of Man. Now this is not Jesus, but it's Son of Man. For the vision is still for end time. So now we get the information here that this vision is for end time. Now, the part where it talks about the Medes and the Persians and the Greeks, if that's also into the end time, so be it. I could be wrong there. I could not. Maybe it's not the Alexander, and maybe it's a Greece and Persia come back and have a war again. I don't know at the end time. That's a possibility. And in his speaking with me, which is seemed because it says for the vision is for the end time, so it seems like it would mean the whole vision rather than just part of it. So that's a very good possibility. And in his speaking with me, I fell upon my face unto the earth, as he said there, and he touched me and stood me upon my feet. And I think it was John that happened, and maybe Ezekiel. And when you come in front of these divine being or God and other beings, boy, it would just shake you up. I mean, they're at a way higher position than you are, and so you would just fall down before them. And Daniel said, "Behold, Gabriel said, Behold, I make known to you the things being at the last of the wrath." The wrath is what they call the tribulation period that will happen, and it's mentioned this whole in the book of Revelation. Most of the book of Revelation is about the wrath. For it is yet for end time. Okay, so now there we are. Again, it's for end time. Now, the ram which you beheld having the horns is the king of the Medes and the Persians. So now either that was Darius and the ones that fought Alexander or not, or somebody in the future. But with the Medes and the Persians, now it's Iranians, but could be. And the he-goat of the goats is the king of the Greeks, which would have been Alexander. See, now he's predicting this, Daniel is. And so that's why these historians have a hard time with this. Of course, they don't look at that. The prediction may be at the end of time in the future from us. And the great horn that was in between his eyes, he is the foremost king. And that would have been Alexander. And of the one being broken, of which 4 horns stood underneath, 4 kings from out of his nation shall rise up, but not in his strength. So it sounds like this is the time of Alexander, because then you had the 4 nations, the Diadochi, that came from out of there. And there's a long period of time. If this was at the end time, that makes the end time sort of makes it seem to be a shorter period, but that wouldn't handle all of this. But anyway, this is the way it is. And at the last of their kingdom, so now the last of their kingdom, being full of the sins, a king shall rise up with an impudent face. Now, so at the last of their kingdom. So it sort of separates it there from these other, the Medes and the Alexander and so forth, to go towards the last. And the kingdom of these Greece and Persian, Iranians or whatever, are still around today. And it says a king shall rise up with an impudent face from one of these areas. So they ruled every place between Egypt and all the way around Israel, all the way up. I believe it was in Israel is where he's going to be. and up into Turkey, all across to Greece. And his strength, and he an impudent face. So he's does what he wants to do. Doesn't care about anybody else. He's in charge, and he's going to do what he wants to do. Doesn't care about other people or any other rulers or whatever in history. And perceiving riddles. To me, that intimates he has high intelligence, able to figure out things that most people can't. And his strength is fortified, and not by his strength. So his power comes from an outer source, probably Satan. And wonderfully he shall corrupt. That means not it's great that it's wonderful, but it's he's going to do it in wonder, and he's going to corrupt. It's going to be how he does it is going to be an amazing feat to be able to corrupt, as he will be able to do. Now, how is somebody able to corrupt wonderfully? I was trying to think of the ways. I was thinking, well, like computer games. Kids spend all these time in front of computer games, and they're corrupted, but they love it. And pornography, people watch it. It says, I think 70% of the internet is pornography watching, and people think it's wonderful to do that. Or politics, and get all involved in every little detail of the political scene in the world. And those things they love doing it. But it corrupts a person. And wonderfully he shall corrupt and prosper. So everyone will be using him. They're going to prosper and shall perform. He shall corrupt and shall prosper and shall perform, and shall corrupt strong ones. So he's a very powerful being of whatever he is, and a holy people. So now even to the people that are wholly separated to God, believers in Jesus, he is going to be corrupting some of them. And the yoke of the collar shall prosper. So his yoke it's a bondage. He's controlling everything. He has a control of everything. It talks about it, the Revelation, about not being able to buy or sell unless you take the mark of the beast. And so he will be able to prosper. He's going to control the monetary rule of the world and bring down wonders from heaven, and a being that's going to be, I think once we see him, if you know anything about Revelation, you're going to know who he is. And treachery is in his hand, and in his heart he shall magnify himself. He believes his own lies, basically. Doesn't believe in God, blasphemes God. He's completely gone. Doesn't believe. I have a friend that I know, I see him. I guess you might think it's kind of strange. I have a friend that doesn't believe in God, but he really does not believe that there is a God. And he's convinced of it. So I suppose the beast can be convinced in himself that he's doing this all and can get away with it, do whatever he wants to, because there is no God. And it doesn't seem like it would be a possible thing, but why not? I believe that's a good possibility. And by treachery, he shall corrupt many, worldwide type of a corruption. And for a destruction of many, he will establish himself. And Jesus called him the liar, and it's called the destroyer, the diabolos. And as eggs in a hand, he shall break. Well, I'm not exactly. I guess as an egg in a hand, he can break something very easily if he wants to. And I don't think it's talking about him being broken, but could be that. It's a strange structure there in the Greek, and either one. In the vision of the Esperus, Vespers, we have a derivative from that. In the vision of the evening and of the morning, of the thing being spoken, it is true. This is it. And, he doesn't know it's happened, but the vision is true. And, this is still the angel saying the vision is true. This is what you saw is going to happen. And you set a seal upon the vision, for it is for many days. So is it still sealed? We see just what we are given right here. It's probably a good possibility. And, but people will know when it happens. Hopefully I won't be around. You won't be around. We'll be taken, snatched away arpazo, the Greek word, to be snatched away like an eagle snatches away its prey, doesn't even know what it's doing, is running around looking for something to eat, and all of a sudden, whammo, it's snatched by these claws, taken up to be eaten by the babies. And we're not going to be taken up to be eaten by the babies, but we're going to be taken up to the Lord. And he'll be come down in the clouds, it says. So however it happens, I want to be with the Lord. And I, Daniel, went to bed and was infirm for days. Well, I can understand that. The seventh chapter to me was way, way more difficult to go through. It took me a couple of weeks to get all the information together, and I was almost like infirm, attacked by the devil in many ways as I was going through that. It's 2 weeks. So tired at the end, but now I'm back in to the 8th chapter, and we'll be going on. And so as Daniel, and I rose up and did the works of the king, and we will now also do the works of the king. And I wondered at the vision, and there was not one perceiving. So I didn't understand the end of it, and neither do we really, but we'll find somebody, if we refer around long enough, we'll find out. And now next, in the chapter 9, we go into the prayer of Daniel. It jumps ahead in time to the first year of Darius, who was the Persian that was, they defeated Babylon and took over. And they were in Susa, this capital, which we just mentioned at the beginning of chapter 8. So I hope you'll join us in chapter 9 as we continue in the book of Daniel. And God bless.